Leave while you can, a calmly delivered message, but there was no questioning the urgency of authorities today in New Brunswick. They tried to appeal to nearly 2,000 people in the province's southern flood zones to evacuate their homes voluntarily while it's still safe to do so. And for anyone in high-risk areas, prepare for the worst.
So many people's reactions may be to say, oh, well, we've seen this before. We're not sure that's the case. We believe that the water levels are exceeding the 2008 levels and will potentially exceed the 1973 levels. So really, this is an event that we have, for many people in many communities, not seen before.
New Brunswick Premier Brian Gallant says he's already spoken with the Prime Minister about disaster assistance from the federal government. And emergency officials had a stern warning for people who choose to stay in their homes when they're being asked to leave.
I want to be perfectly clear that they should not expect things to be delivered to them. We're not in the business of delivering food or water or fuel or other supplies because those things are really a distraction from emergency operations that we can ill afford.
The worst of the flooding right now is in southern New Brunswick. In one small community, Darlings Island, the single road in and out is now underwater. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell tells us how people there are coping.
Cindy McKay is fleeing her home. The only way out is by boat. There's already water in her basement, and she isn't sticking around to see what might be next.
I can hear the water sloshing. So it was like I just went over and moved everything upstairs, and said goodbye to my cats. Yeah.
But a couple of hours later, McKay decides to go back for the cats because the situation is getting worse.
Don't think I've ever been this stressed in my life, ever.
This is the only road into and out of the community, and people are using any way and every way to get around, leaving their cars on dry ground. Kids are going from the school bus to a kayak, backpacks and all.
This is the biggest flood I ever saw on Darlings Island before in my whole entire life.
Just in the 2 hours since we've arrived, the water level is rising quite a bit. It gets deeper as you go further down this road. Some residents have told us they've waded in water up to their chest. But they say once you get on the island, the homes are on higher ground and not at risk. The issue is getting out. Paul Thompson is determined to wait it out, preparing his home as best he can. But he worries about the many elderly people who live on the island.
My neighbor, who's 85, had hip surgery a while ago. So it's quite an impact. And he walked out with his walker, through the water.
Thompson is angry the government isn't doing more to help.
There's an emergency boat, but haven't seen it here, that it's supposed to be for take people back and forth in case of an emergency.
Cindy McKay wants to leave for good, but worries about the value of her property.
I want to move. I want out of here. I've been here for 17 years. This is my 5th flood. I'm done.
For now, all they can do is help each other as they watch the water rise. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Darlings Island, New Brunswick.
And joining us now, also watching and waiting, Harry Forstell in Fredericton. So, Harry, we heard there's some people saying this is the worst flooding they've ever seen. Do we know what's around the corner?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, things appear to have stabilized here in Fredericton for the time being, Andrew. The river is still at flood level, but it isn't climbing any further. The question is what's going to happen to all the water that's flowing down this river. Eventually, it meets the Kennebecasis River, and both those bodies of water join up to go into the Bay of Fundy through the mouth of the St. John River, which is a very narrow gorge. All that water isn't going to fit through there at once. It's going to back up into the river valley and then be hit by a couple of Fundy tides that's going to add a lot of water. So we're not out of the woods by a long shot yet, Andrew.
And so, Harry, what is the response from government?
Well, Premier Brian Gallant had mentioned today that there would be some disaster assistance for those people who have lost their homes or had them damaged and businesses damaged. The other question is, what about the military? Do they have a role here? The Premier today said, we appreciate the military standing by, but we don't really need them yet. I talked with emergency measures officials in St. John earlier today, and they said they had discussed calling in the military, had decided that they would revisit that idea tomorrow. At this point, it doesn't seem likely, but it may become necessary as that floodwater hits the lower part of the river and St. John. So we'll have to wait and see on that, Andrew.
Okay, we'll see. Harry Forstell in Fredericton, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Now, let me give you a sense of just how high the water is in St. John. The record level set in 1973 was 5.3 meters. Today, it reached 5.1. By tomorrow, it's expected to hit 5.4. And by Friday, 5.7 meters. That's almost 20 feet high. So let's bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff. Because, Joe, we heard Harry talking about the geography, the terrain. What's the biggest threat in the forecast?
Well, Andrew, the immediate threat is the rain that's falling tonight. We're just looking at a general 10 to 20 millimeters across the province. Not enough for Environment Canada warning criteria, but there is a special weather statement because of embedded thunderstorms. We've been seeing lightning roll across New Brunswick through the evening hours, and that may lead to higher downpours. And all of that water, as Harry mentioned, will eventually end up in the St. John River system, ultimately making its way down through the south over the next couple of days.
And Joe, how much worse do we think this could get in the medium term?
Well, unfortunately, it's a bit of a worst-case scenario as far as the forecast goes. We've got the rain to get through tonight, and then temperatures are actually climbing as we head into the end of the week. And we still have a snowpack to melt. There's a substantial amount of snow, especially in the northern end of the province, over 40 centimeters in some estimations. And with these temperatures climbing into the high teens, low 20s, that will lead to rapid melt by the time we hit the end of the week and the weekend. And once again, all of that melted snow will make its way down through the river system, which is why we're talking at least another week of high concern.
Okay, buckle in. Our meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaff. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.